Do we have Mrs. Hillhouse back in with us? Mrs. Hillhouse, are you back with us?
Yes,
Grand. Chief Inspector, are you with us?
No, the police aren't in yet.
Okay. I can see we've got Mr. Dixon with us. That's grand. We'll just make we'll move to determination then after discussing the item, which was really about tidying up some of the points here. And I'm going to move that we grant the application, but I would just say, and to be absolutely crystal clear, from the LSO report, conditions 5 onwards are imposed in relation to the outside licence area only. And condition 14, the final condition in the LSO report, I'm going to amend the wording, and it will now read: any music or other entertainment must cease no later than 15 minutes prior to the end of the terminal hour for the outside area. It's really just some tidying up of language that we wanted to get in there.
Convener, my apologies. In terms of, I mentioned earlier on the policy condition about funerals. Do you wish to make that part of your motion as well, about giving 24 hours to the board of any funeral events?
So I'm sorry, I'm not going fast enough, Douglas. That's the bits from this side of my desk. I'm now moving over to this one. And the final condition to add is that the council would require, or licensing department rather, would require 24 hours notice for the granting of any funeral purvey condition, which is as we all agreed prior to the discussion. With those conditions and straightening outs attached, I'm going to grant that we move that we grant the application. Are members agreed? It's agreed. Thank you.
Can I just ask a wee question here?
By all means.
You mentioned about the funeral purveys, which is fine. I would also put on the application for some time, maybe up to about 4 or 5 times a year, we have some major club competitions, and we had requested that we could open from the bar from 9:30 on those specific days. Is that maybe still okay?
Yeah, yes, thanks, convener. Just to confirm, yes, that was noted as part of your application, Ms. Hillhouse, but the policy condition is only about funerals, so you wouldn't have to give 24 hours notice about club activities. It would only be about funerals. You would have to give 24 hours notice.
We will be able to open from 9:30.
Yeah, your application has been granted in that respect, subject to all the conditions that have been mentioned.
Right, thank you.
Many thanks, Mrs. Hillhouse. That's you finished in the meeting, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just take a moment while people who are leaving leave, and we move on to the next item before us, which is Pockets, 58 Stock Street, Paisley. Douglas, can you lead us in?
Thanks, convener. Yes, this is an application also for major variation. The parties present for this item, I think Mr. McGowan is here today with a member of the company. Mr. McGowan, could you clarify who's here for the applicants, please?
Good morning, Mr. Campbell, and good morning, convener, Councillor Steele and your honours. Nice to see you all again. I'm appearing in this case. Michaela McInnes is with me. She's somewhere out there in the ether. I can see her name, but not her face at the moment. Michaela McInnes is the operator now of Pockets, and obviously I'll go into a bit of detail when appropriate, convener.
Convener, I should add, Police Scotland are also here in relation to this matter. There's a representation from them, and Chief Inspector Gregson will confirm, I'm sure, that she will speak to the police later. And apart from that, convener, as I say, the application is effectively to remove some conditions from the licence, which I think were added at a time of review when the licence was held by a previous operator. They're seeking to operate the Sunday hours from 11 AM, which is within the council's current policy, whereas at the moment they've only have from 12:30 PM, which reflects the historical policy of the board. There are slight changes to the wording around activities, and there are changes around children and young persons access. And other than that, convener, for you to hear from the police and then hear from Mr. McGowan in response, and then the procedure would follow as normal.
Many thanks, Douglas. Chief Inspector.
Thank you, Your Honours. If it's okay, are you happy that I don't go into the detail of the variation request and I just jump to our specific points that we wish to cover?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So in terms of Police Scotland, in terms of section 22, 1B, 2 and 3 of the same Act, make the following representation. In respect of the addition of receptions to the premises operating plan, I respectfully request that Your Honours give consideration to adding the following conditions to any granted licence. They are management to ensure that proper procedures for the booking of events are implemented, including obtaining full names, contact numbers, addresses of the persons booking. Police Scotland are informed of all events and receptions at least 7 days prior to the event reception taking place. No bookings to be taken for receptions in which it would be likely that the patrons would be predominantly under the age of 21 years old. Management to ensure staffing levels are at all times and during receptions in particular are sufficient to allow effective control of patrons. Staff numbers should take into account the need to carry out robust age verification, collection of empty glasses, monitoring of toilets and limitation of levels of intoxication among patrons, as well as the efficient operation of the bars themselves. A minimum of 2 SIA licensed door stewards employed from an SIA accredited contractor should be on duty at relevant times, including all events, and when appropriate, at least 1 steward per anticipated 50 patrons. These stewards should be trained in alcohol awareness and conflict management. This representation is submitted for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Chief Inspector. Mr. McGill.
Good morning, Your Honours. Michaela McInnes is with me, as I said earlier on. She's a director of Blackball Tables Limited, who is now the operator at Pockets and Stock Street. I will deal with the conditions which have been proposed by Chief Inspector Gregson, but I think it would be helpful if I just take a little step back and give Your Honours a wee bit of context about this. You've heard from Mr. Campbell there about some of the recent history here. I'm sure Your Honours have strong recollections of this premises going back to November last year, when the board had to revoke this premises licence due to a number of issues which had been a part of the history of the premises under the old management. So, Your Honours, one of the things that I think it's incumbent upon me to make perfectly clear is that Michaela has no connection to the previous licence holder and the previous holder. It's very much a premises which is under new management. Michaela actually took a lease of the premises just before Your Honours had reached the decision to revoke the licence. And by then, obviously, the wheels were in motion. You know, Your Honours had the hearing and had to reach the decision that you did. However, as an unconnected person, Michaela approached Your Honours to see if you would recall the revocation, as she was coming in as a completely different person to take over the business and take it forward. Your Honours did recall the revocation of the licence and transferred the licence to Michaela, and that was granted by you back in January of this year. So Your Honours, I think, saw that Michaela was coming in as a completely different person. You were happy to bring the licence back from the dead, as it were, to give it to Michaela to move forward with. So the licence was restored. But, and I think here is the rub, it was restored warts and all. In other words, it was restored with the onerous conditions which had been on the licence as a result of the failings of previous operators of the premises. So there were and there are a number of what you might call, or what I might call, onerous conditions which are on the licence that would not normally have been on that licence if it weren't for the past failings of previous operators. So Michaela approached me and asked me for my help to review those conditions, and the result of that is the application that's before you today, Your Honours. And it really does two key things, one of which is to remove these onerous conditions, and then we've also sought to tidy up a couple of bits of the licence as well. And obviously I will give you my submissions in respect of both of those matters. But I think when you boil this down, Your Honours, what we're really saying here is that Michaela deserves to have the licence on a clean slate basis. She shouldn't be encumbered by onerous conditions as a result of what has happened in the past. Before we lodged this application formally with Your Honours, we did approach the police and spoke with Chief Inspector Gregson's colleagues in the licensing department. We showed them a draft of what we were proposing to do, and I think there was a constructive dialogue between ourselves and the police as a result of that, where we endeavoured to take on board their views. And I think it's important that it's encouraging for us to see that the police haven't objected to the application. They haven't objected to the requests which we've made in the application. What they have done is ask for some additional wording for comfort, and I will come back to that in a wee minute. And I think we're going to be, on the same page for the vast majority of this. Now, in terms of the tidy up, as Mr. Campbell said, we're asking for, Your Honour, standard Sunday hours. We've asked to add receptions as an activity, which I'll come back to, and we've asked to add wording to allow pool and snooker tournaments to take place from 9 AM. Obviously, we've made it clear that there wouldn't be any alcohol sold until after 11 AM, when the standard hours kick in. One of the things that's happened here, Your Honours, that I think it's important for me to explain is that what Michaela's trying to do is to bring this premises back online with the official tournament organising bodies, the Scottish Pool Association, the Scottish Snooker Association. So these are the people that Michaela is trying to bring back into pockets, and to have it known as a bona fide premises where the official tournaments for people who wish to involve themselves in these sporting activities can do so at pockets. Now, a large number of these tournaments will start before 11 o'clock in the morning. So all we're really saying to you, Your Honours, is Michaela's trying to make this premises go forward and associate it with the official bodies. That means that we really need to be open before 11 AM, purely to allow the snooker or the pool to start playing. And there might be a bit of background music, that type of thing. So I'm hoping that Your Honour see that that's a reasonable request, and it's something which Michaela is asking you for on a very legitimate basis. We've changed one or two other things. I think we've added in wording that says community and charity events may take place, and then we're looking to delete the onerous conditions, which I've referred to. And as I say, it's encouraging to see that the police don't oppose that. What the police have said, and what Chief Inspector Gregson has just read out, is a number of new conditions which they would like us to agree to in lieu of what was there before. And if I say to Your Honours, we are happy to accept all of them with one slight tweak, that would hopefully give both Chief Inspector Gregson and yourself some comfort. So for the avoidance of doubt, we are happy to accept conditions listed 1, 2, 3 and 4 on the police letter. With condition 5, I'm going to look for a slight tweak. Now, I think all of these conditions arise in relation to receptions. I think the police letter makes that clear. So one of the things that I just want to slightly tweak on that condition, which we're happy to accept in general, is that what we don't want to have is a condition which imposes stewards for pool and tournament events. We're very happy to accept that condition in relation to receptions, which is what the police ask for. So, for example, that would be community nights, charity nights, birthday parties and so on. But for the avoidance of doubt, Your Honours, you'll see that we've accepted the condition proposed by the police, which would steer us clear of 18th and 21st birthday style events. Michaela is not interested in having that type of event, and you can see we've accepted that previous condition. So I just want to be clear, Your Honours, that although the police seem to me to be clear in their letter that they're really only proposing this in relation to receptions, I just don't want that condition to go in the licence and for there to be any dubiety over the fact that in my submission it shouldn't attach to your typical association pool or tournament event, because I think that would be disproportionate in the round. So I suppose I'm asking for a slight tweak where, just for the avoidance of any doubt, that last condition which is proposed by the police says that a minimum of 2 SIA licensed store stewards employed from an SIA accredited contractor should be on duty at relevant times. And then this is the key part, it says including all events. Now, what I would say at that point, Your Honours, is we should add in brackets accepting pool and snooker tournaments, and the rest of it is fine. So it is a very modest tweak. I don't think it defeats the purpose of what the police are trying to achieve, which is about the other events that may happen. It's the receptions and so on. And hopefully what that does, Your Honours, is send a signal to you that what Michaela is really trying to do here is to move this premises forward in a very professional capacity, where we're trying to attract the Scottish Pool Association tournament play and the Snooker Association tournament play. And you know, that's the sort of focus of the premises. It's the primary purpose of the premises. Now, that together with my other submission that what we're not doing at all is going back to the bad old days of what Pockets was in the past. Michaela has been very clear with me, with the police, and is now doing so today with Your Honours, that, you know, she's taking this premises forward in a professional capacity, and very much hopes that Your Honours can support her with that. It is, I think, really important to the viability of Pockets as a business that those tweaks are accepted and agreed, so that she can move matters forward. So I hope that's relatively clear, Your Honours. As I say, we've approached this hopefully in the correct way. That slight tweak we're asking for, I think, is for justifiable reasons. And the last point I'll make, Your Honours, before pausing, is to say that Michaela's also asked me to say that she would be more than happy to continue to work positively with the police going forward, and of course Mr Dixon and licensing standards as well, and would be more than happy to meet with them on an ongoing basis to come in and see how events, pool tournaments and so on are working. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope that's clear, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr McGowan. We seem to be broadly, as you suggest, on the same page. I do have a slight question about the tweaking, as you say, of the final condition for snooker and pool events. Are you referring to officially sanctioned by the relevant tour bodies of these two sports, or more would it include community-based events, for example?
I think we would like to have both, Convener. So obviously the premises does offer the officially sanctioned tournaments, but they also run more informal tournaments as well. And our submission on that would be this: running these tournaments is not a type of facility or use of the premises which in any way creates antisocial behaviour or any rowdiness that would lead to concerns. People are coming to take part in the tournaments to play pool or snooker. That's the principal reason for coming to the premises. So that's why we're seeking to carve out that from the wider condition, because we accept that it's reasonable to ask for a shielding condition when the premises may be getting used for some other reason, where snooker is ancillary, for example, a big birthday party or an anniversary or something like that. So I think Michaela does see that that's reasonable. But where it's for tournament play, whether official or community-based tournament play, we think it's a bit too much and disproportionate in the round, especially given that we've accepted all the other conditions which the police are proposing.
Yeah, and would you be able to give me a wee idea of, I don't expect you to quantify this down to an exact number, but how many community-based events do you think you would be looking to hold over, say, a period of a year, for example? Even a ballpark.
I think Michaela should answer that question directly. She'll have much more detail on that. Michaela, could you try to answer that question for Councillor Steele, please?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm being completely honest, we're not looking at running very many of these kind of events. The main thing for me going forward anyway is to make the pool and the snooker successful, and we're just a little bit limited at the minute, so we're not going to be advertising that we've got that small function room there. If somebody comes in and wants to use it, and I think that it's acceptable and it's it works for us and the community, that's fine. But I would honestly probably say half a dozen in a year, maybe up to 10. It's not something that I want to do. That space is currently used as our darts area. It's not, I'm not into functions, and I'm not into big events and big groups of people. That's not what I'm about.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Councillor Brown? Afraid your mute's still on, Bill.
All right, 2 points. You've asked for the condition that a personal licence holder must be on duty at all times, and young persons to leave the premises by 9 p.m. I'd like to be reassured that whoever is serving the alcohol is either qualified, experienced, or knowledgeable, if not necessarily certified to purchase it. Can we have an undertaking on that? And also, why are you asking young persons to be on after 9 p.m?
Happy to deal with both of those questions, Councillor Brown. If I deal with your first question, absolutely we can give that undertaking. The removal of the onerous condition to require a personal licence holder to be on at all times doesn't mean there will be no personal licence holders. There will be personal licence holders. There is personal licence holders who work on the premises, including, of course, the current DPM. In addition to that, Your Honour can probably take some comfort, Councillor Brown, from the fact that the mandatory staff training condition still applies, and of course we're not seeking to remove that. We can't. It's one of the standard conditions that applies to the licence. So in addition to those two comments, I think what Michaela would want me to say to Your Honour is we absolutely do give that undertaking that the alcohol will be supervised, it will be sold responsibly, and that's a kind of general management undertaking, as well as the points I've made about the mandatory conditions. I hope that gives Councillor Brown comfort. The other question you asked there was about children. The reason we've removed the two conditions that were imposed is because they actually were not necessary, because the conditions were a doubler. The wording in relation to the children's access is actually already in the operating plan. So really the conditions were unnecessary because it was just saying the same thing twice. I'm sure Mr Campbell can confirm that from the clerk's perspective. So in relation to the conditions being dropped, the wording about children's access is actually still there. It's just in the operating plan, and therefore it's not needed as a separate condition, because you're just saying the same thing twice. In terms of young persons, what we're saying is that it could be the case that if there were a family function, then we would like the ability to have a young person to stay on the premises to, you know, participate in a family function. But that really is a very modest tidy up of the overall thrust of this application, Councillor Brown, and you've heard from Michaela already this morning to indicate that although we're asking for that because it would be nice to have that flexibility, it's very much an infrequent thing. It's not something that is part of what Pockets is designed to be. It's just to give us that wee bit of flexibility.
All right, Bill. Either Douglas or Mr McGowan might be able to answer this one. What terminal hour is currently in place in the operating plan for children and young persons?
It's 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Okay, thank you. Do any other colleagues have questions on this application? Okay, well, in the case, we'll move on to summary. Chief Inspector, anything in summary?
Thank you, Your Honours. Obviously, we've obviously raised our points, and thank you, Stephen, just for giving your perspective on the last point. From a policing perspective, I understand the angle that you're obviously approaching that on, and I respect that. For ourselves, it's just for that overarching public safety disorder risk in terms of people that we potentially attend in that event. I'm not sure the intricacies of how that will play out in terms of people who are there to partake in the tournament are just there to play pool or snooker, or do you have people there observing, drinking alcohol? And it's that aspect, that overarching risk, that we would just be looking to make sure that we have sufficient stewards in place to manage that, and just also reflect the good organisation and structure that the premises has, which is obviously something the licensed premises is trying to achieve and moving forward. Nothing else from Police Scotland.
Thank you, Chief Inspector. Mr McGowan, your turn for summary, and if you could perhaps address that issue of the spectators for the events, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I'll do that, Convener. I think, you know, that I really don't think that the police and my client are very far apart on this at all. You know, I think that there is a real desire to move forward in a positive way. Whilst I'm very clear and have been very clear with you that in relation to this last condition, we do need to have, from my client's perspective, pool and tournaments removed. If I offer just one further tweak, which is a direct response to what Chief Inspector Gregson has said, that I think may just get us there. in the condition that's proposed by the police, on the second line of the document I have, it says should be on duty at relevant times. If I were to propose an alternative to that wording which says should be on duty on a risk-assessed basis, that to me is a proportionate wording, because it means that Michaela has to take a risk assessment, a risk-assessed approach as to when stewards are required. I think that, because relevant times, you know, what is relevant times, it's not entirely clear what that wording may be. But if you put in the wording risk-assessed basis, then that, I hope, gets us there, because what Michaela would clearly want to do, if the board is with us on this, and we very much hope you are, that we're excluding the pool and snooker tournaments for everything else, such as receptions and so on. We absolutely would work with the police in relation to those events, and we absolutely would work with Colin Dixon in relation to those events, and I hope I've made that clear. And maybe that last wee tweak just gets us there. I don't think you need anything else from me on this, Your Honours. I'm sure you're clear in your own minds about what we want to achieve and what Michaela wants to do, so I would just be repeating myself. But again, if there's any last tweaks or questions, I'll happily deal with them.
Well, as we have come to the end of submissions, that's us. We're going to take a short recess for discussion, and hopefully we'll be back just shortly, just as before. If you could leave if you're not a council officer or elected member, and we'll get you back in as soon as we can.
Thank you, Convener.